Sunday Sports Day. The West gets wilder as the Braves and the Giants stride toward a showdown at the stick. The injury report from Texas, Ryan may be headed back to the DL, but Aikman is back in the saddle. A lion on the loose, Barry Sanders hopes to run wild this season. Paul Azinger looks back on a shark encounter.
I don't mind telling him I was nervous.
Michael Jordan looks to the future.
Basketball? I haven't even thought about basketball. I didn't think about basketball before all this happened. So, right now it's just summer and relaxing and enjoying the company that I am in right now.
All the highlights from blocked punts to run-scoring bunts next on Sunday Sports Day. One of the worst slumps of his otherwise fabulous baseball career. Indians and the Red Sox. Scott Fletcher tries to get the Red Sox going by two-hopping the Green Monster, but Albert Bell plays the ball well and guns it to nail Fletcher at second. Top of the ninth, 5-all tie. Sandy Alomar at first. Wayne Kirby lays down the sack bunt. Greg Harris throws it over both Carlos Quintana and Fletcher. And here comes Alomar. He will score all the way from first, part of a 5-run Tribe ninth. They won it 10-5. The Royals and the Yanks bottom of the 6th, 2-all tie. Mike Gallego gets a bloop single to left off Mike Magnati, bringing home Bernie Williams, 3-2 Yanks. Then in the 8th, Gallego does it on D. The diving play on George Brett. Yanks win it 3-2. The M's and the Blue Jays, Ken Griffey Jr. against Dave Stewart. He continues to add to the M's home run record for a season, number 34 for Jr. M's win it 5-2. Well, now that all that's said and done, the AL East stacks up like this now. The Yanks are again tied with the Jays for the lead, and the Orioles, winners of 3 straight, are 4.5 out. The Sox have dropped 5 back. As for the NL West, the division leading, for the AL West, it is the White Sox with a 4-game lead over the Kansas City Royals. The Rangers are 5.5 back. The Mariners 6.5 out. As for the NL West, the division-leading Giants face the Marlins again. Scott Sanderson made just his 3rd National League start, and he sure wanted to end his personal losing streak. Sanderson was winless in his last 13 starts, the longest losing streak in all of Major League Baseball. Catch of the day, though, belongs to Will Clark at the photographer's well. Makes the catch off Jeff Conine. Then the bottom of the 7th, 6-2 Giants. Robbie Thompson adds on to the Giants' margin with his 13th homer of the year. Thompson with 3 hits and 3 RBIs. The Giants win 7-4. How about the Braves and the Cubs? Top of the 8th, 3-2 Cubs. Dan Plesac facing Fred McGriff, and if you're a Brave fan, you'll love this. A homer to left center, a 2-run blast. Braves take a 4-3 lead. 3 batters later, it is Javier Lopez. His first Major League homer, a 2-run blast, and the Braves win it by a final of 6-3. With the Giants and the Braves both winning on Saturday, San Francisco remains 7.5 games ahead of Atlanta. Well, back to the NFL, and speaking of back, Troy Aikman tested his for the first time this preseason as the Super Bowl champs took on Houston in the Battle of Texas. The Cowboys love having this man back. Jimmy Johnson looks on and sees Aikman's first pass from scrimmage to Michael Irvin. A gain of 24 yards. Everybody's happy to have him back, and so is Michael Irvin. Go on with your bad self. In the second quarter, Aikman scrambles for the first down. Aikman was 12 of 17 for 138 yards, but the Cowboys lost to the Oilers by a final of 23-20. Now for a look at the rest of Saturday's preseason results. Now to yesterday's running of the $1 Million Travers Stakes at historic Saratoga in upstate New York. A race featuring 11 top 3-year-olds led by Kentucky Derby winner C. Hero. It had been some time since a Derby winner had also won the Travers Stakes.
And down the stretch
Up next, Michael Jordan attempts to return to a normal life.
I'm doing fine. I'm doing really good. I'm strong mentally, I'm strong physically, and I just got to move forward.
A week ago today, the Jordan family gathered to say goodbye to James Jordan. And while Michael Jordan and his family are trying to cope with this tragic loss, many questions still surround the murder of James Jordan. The two teenage suspects were arraigned last week. Tom Mees has more.
The streets were filled with spectators on Monday as Larry Demery and Daniel Green were seen publicly at the first appearance hearing for the murder of James Jordan.
He's a little subdued, I guess, by the magnanimity of it all. They always present their version of things in the light most favorable to them, and I would expect them to do that in this case. So I'm not surprised by that. If there's any weaknesses, they're not going to disclose it up front without some digging and some motion.
Tuesday, according to a Raleigh TV station, Demery's lawyer, Hugh Rogers, fingered Green as the trigger man and suggested that his client should be tested for mental deficiency. But later in the week, according to the Charlotte Observer, Rogers recanted his story, believing both 18-year-olds were not guilty of murder, having accidentally stumbled upon Mr. Jordan's body. Wednesday, North Carolina police claimed to have found a .38 caliber pistol believed to be the murder weapon. They also recovered a videotape that shows one of the suspects performing a rap song while wearing an NBA championship ring that Michael gave to his father. The suspects were being kept in isolation at the Robeson County Jail, where they are being held without bond. Officials said the move was made to ensure their safety behind bars. Michael's first reaction to his father's death was released in a written statement on Thursday. Jordan was moved by the outpouring of public sympathy for him and his family and thanked the police for their support and efforts. However, he was upset by some press reports speculating that the murder was a result of illegal activities that he or his father may have done. Friday, Jordan made his first public appearance at the Rose Elder Invitational Golf Shootout in Leesburg, Virginia. Jordan was in good spirits at the event, and on Saturday morning, he commented publicly on how his family was dealing with the tragedy.
My family's pretty strong, and we're together, we bonded, and naturally it's tough for anybody to swallow, not just my family, any family that has this type of circumstances to deal with. But I think we're pretty strong, and we're moving forward with our lives, and we got a lot of memories to think about, and we just got to keep forward.
And Dick Schaap was in Leesburg, Virginia yesterday. It has been a difficult time for Michael Jordan, Dick, but it did appear that he was able to relax.
Well, he was in remarkably good spirits yesterday before he teed off on the golf course. He was needling Bill Russell and Night Train Lane about their ages and about their golf games. And, of course, they were needling him back and forth. And they seemed to be working as friends should to try to make him feel better. The feeling I got was that he wasn't trying to play for sympathy. I mean, not that he hadn't gone through a great traumatic experience, but he wasn't asking for sympathy. He wasn't trying to milk people's sympathy. Michael Jordan was trying to be Michael Jordan again. And, I think under the circumstances, that's all you could want from him, Robin.
That's right. He said he's not even thinking about basketball, and that's quite understandable. When Sports Weekly continues, not a good week for Auburn University, as its football program was hit hard by NCAA sanctions. Something many believe will also hit college football hard, gender equity. And the battle lines have been drawn.
We've got to be very careful in our game. I think we've got to be very careful on a national level. The product is what is constantly being diffused. By taking away and taking away, the product is being hurt.
Handed down severe sanctions against Auburn's once dominant football program. The Tigers have been barred from postseason competition for 2 years and will not be allowed on television for 1. The penalties also include cuts in scholarships and forfeiting as much as $3 million in SEC revenues. The rules violations included repeated and regular cash payments to former Tiger Eric Ramsey. It's the 6th time since 1956 that Auburn has been on probation.
Today is a sad day for our athletics program and an embarrassing day for our institution.
There's not a bad time to get the Auburn job at Auburn University. Whether there are better times than others, maybe so, but I still think this is the finest institution, one of the finest institutions that you have an opportunity to coach.
I come here to Auburn for several reasons. One is to get a degree, because they have a nice program here. Another reason is to play football.
We're here to play football and go to school, and that's our main 2 goals.
Auburn is a great place. We have the best fans in the world. We have the most loyal fans in the world. This is a great place to come to college. You have a chance to get a great education.
In just over an hour or so, the Washington Huskies are expected to find out what penalties their football program will suffer because of rules violations. According to the Morning News Tribune in Tacoma, it could be far more severe than the Huskies had anticipated. We'll keep you up to date on SportsCenter at 11:30 Eastern. Earlier this month, the NCAA announced it will not adopt an all-encompassing set of gender equity rules. Thought to be the main reason behind that decision, college football. And football coaches around the country fear that this decision will put their programs in jeopardy by scaling down their budgets and cutting scholarships. Steve Cyphers reports.
In an out-of-court settlement, the University of Texas agrees to field a women's soccer team this fall. A judge rules Colorado State University must reinstate its softball program. Were it not for the existence of football teams at these two schools and a move toward gender equity, the settlement and the ruling might not have occurred. In women's sports, gender equity means more in 1993. In men's sports, including football, it could mean less.
What has to be done with this football animal is you have to reduce expenses. You have to look at personnel and you have to look at scholarships and say, can we cut this down?
Can we improve it? Can we make it better? Can we cut down abuses and streamline and cut back? Certainly, and I think there's a real movement underfoot nationally to do that. But at the same time, should we obliterate it and totally change the structure of it in the name of this cause or that cause? I think not.
With education cutbacks and skyrocketing tuition, scholarships add up, especially in football, where Division I-A teams are allowed 88. The greatest number of scholarships in any women's sport is 16. Gender equity guidelines suggest the number of male and female athletes mirror that of the school's overall population. But with so many football players, the numbers don't work. So administrators are left with an equation that either adds more women or subtracts more men or does a little or a lot of both.
The thing that surprises football coaches is that why they just don't take the football budget out of the equation and match up the other sports and say, well, you don't want to lose on your budget.
We have to take that difference into account, but we don't want to say that we're going to set football aside and ignore it and pretend, as some have said, that football is a third sex.
Dr. Albino served on the NCAA's Gender Equity Task Force, along with former Baylor coach and athletic director Grant Tapp.
The concept is, if we've got to try to do something if the game is going to be destroyed. And anybody that doesn't have enough fight in them to fight when something you love is in jeopardy or being destroyed, then they need to get out of the game.
It appointed the task force, and now the task force is running into a political maelstrom in that the football powers are loath to see anything that damages football.
The product is what is constantly being diffused. By taking away and taking away, the product is being hurt.
Cutting scholarship values by even 40%, but leaving 85 grants is not going to create any change on the field at the Notre Dame game. The same kids will be there. They'll play the same quality sport. Same fans will buy the tickets. They'll be just as rabid, and they'll still be in the top 10.
Football scholarships numbered 105 20 years ago. Next year, the limit is 85. If it goes any lower, and many believe it will, and if the coaching staffs and recruiting and practice days continue to be reduced, coaches say the integrity of the game and the school's entire athletic program will suffer.
At what point do you pluck all the feathers from the goose and he can't lay an egg to support the rest of the sports? I think that's a difficult one to answer.
Representative Cardis Collins of Illinois chairs a subcommittee concerned with compliance and enforcement of Title IX. She says football loses more money than it makes.
All the men and women share equally in the added cost when there's a deficit for football. That should be understood. That's the only place I've seen gender equity is in the cost of overcoming those deficits for football.
The reason we have the game as it is today is the public wants it. It's a great public relations vehicle and fundraising vehicle for the university. It's a rallying point for the alums and the students on campus. It's good for the community and the state. College football is more than a game.
It is more than a game. Both detractors and proponents of the sport agree. But in the case of gender equity, is that fair? In Boulder, Colorado, Steve Cyphers, ESPN.
Despite Despite repeated victories in court lately concerning Title IX, the NCAA declined to sponsor legislation to raise the limit on financial aid in women's sports while keeping the present higher limits on the men's. NCAA President Joseph Crowley said that given all the differences among NCAA institutions, ultimately will have to be up to each school to address these gender equity issues. Pro football returns to the Sunday Sports Day spotlight next. 36 days and $144,000 later, Jeff George decided to end his holdout. He returned to the Colts on Friday just in time to pick up his first paycheck. By George, we'll bring you the NFL Week in Review next.
You see me.
Putting the final touches on training camps, from signing veteran holdouts to replacing injured players, it was a busy week around all 28 NFL camps. But the biggest news of the week, as Jack Edwards reports, came from Indianapolis.
Jeff George finally rolled into Colts camp Friday after racking up nearly $150,000 in fines. Rather than face the hostile Indianapolis media, George skipped the press conference announcing his return.
We're glad to have Jeff back. I think, number one, we feel, and we felt this way at all times, that Jeff can be a valuable asset. He can help this football team win.
So, in George's absence, the starting job was Jack Trudeau's to lose, but a funny thing happened on the way to opening day. Trudeau was knocked out of action Friday with a bruised left hand, so in came quarterback number 3, Don Majkowski. The Magic Man tossed a 23-yard touchdown pass to rookie Sean Dawkins in the 18-7 Colts win. With last year's MVP Steve Young and number 3 man Bill Musgrave both on the sidelines, the Niners were left with backup Steve Bono and rookie Elvis Gerbach to tend to the signal calling Monday night. But the Broncos' Darren Drozdov planted Bono into the mile-high side. And before you could say Joe Montana, the Niners were down to one quarterback. Bono is expected to miss at least 8 weeks with a severely separated shoulder. In New England, number 1 draft pick Drew Bledsoe made his case to become the Pats' starting quarterback with a 2-touchdown performance against the Packers. In the first preseason win of the Bill Parcells era, Bledsoe threw for 240 yards, including the winning score, this 17-yard strike to Mike Farr for the 21-17 win. This week, Wayne Fontes gave the Lions' starting job to Rodney Peete. Friday, Peete reinforced that decision by tossing a touchdown and completing 10 of 20 in Detroit's 30-7 win over the Bengals. Also receiving the starting nod for Week 1 were Boomer Esiason of the Jets and Jim McMahon of the Vikings. Rich Gannon ended up being the odd man out in Minnesota, so the Vikes sent the 7-year man to Washington for a conditional draft pick. The Lions bolstered their secondary with the acquisition of colorful cornerback Tim McKyer. Veteran receiver Mark Duper was cut by the Bengals on Monday, then picked up by the Eagles on Tuesday. Several players ended holdouts or came to terms this week, including San Diego sackman Leslie O'Neal, Falcons wideout Andre Rison, and the Giants' standout left tackle Jumbo Elliott. The Redskins were dealt a severe blow when it was announced that their all-pro tackle, Jim Lachey, will likely miss the entire season. Lachey tore the anterior cruciate ligament in his right knee 2 weeks ago against the Browns.
You know it, you love it, you can't live without it. Face-off. And the bone of contention this week, you breathlessly ask, concerns the Atlanta Braves. Can the 2-time defending National League champs catch the front-running San Francisco Giants? Well, they certainly have enough strong arms. We'll face off next.
What's exciting about the business, even though we've been in it now 30 years, we're still learning every day. We've made every mistake twice at least. We're always experimenting with new shapes and new forms, but I think that's part of the learning curve. I think that's part of the lesson of life, and certainly the lesson of retail. And I think that just the very fact that people can use their American Express card ends up creating an additional sale for the store.
American Express is welcome to Crate and Barrel, and plenty of places they pack them in.
Sir, there's no question that...
Sales definitely look good next quarter.
Splendid. Call line 3, Miss Gray.
Hello? Jason.
America's future belongs to America's students, and giving your child a good education is job number 1. So at Office Depot, we make it our job to give you the best selection of school supplies at the best prices. Office Depot, from the classroom to the boardroom.
Crystal knows there's nothing like pure, clear water.
That's why Diamond Crystal makes some of the most advanced water softener salts you can buy. Make your water special with Diamond Crystal.
In the Gulf of Mexico, Phillips Petroleum was one of the first companies to create artificial reefs from its oil rigs. It's something that's attracted hundreds of species of fish while helping to protect the livelihood of a rare breed of man. That's what it means to be the Performance Company.
Tomorrow with the stick, it's going to be face-to-face, mano-a-mano for the National League West when the Giants host the Braves. You know, the team whose pitching is as hot as the upper deck in Atlanta's Fulton County Stadium. Okay, so what if they've got Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, Steve Avery, Tom Glavine, and Mark Wohlers? Do you really think Barry Bonds and Matt Williams are sweating it out, especially after their own little home run derby in Chicago? You know, the one that goes like this, past the ivy, over the brick wall, into the kitchen window, nothing but dingers. Besides, they're going to be hitting at home, and there's only one other National League West team that has more loyal fans, Denver. And they'll even show up for the Pope. Come to think of it, if the Braves want to beat the Giants at home, that's exactly what Bobby Cox should be bringing from Atlanta. A prayer.
It's time for Face Off, our weekly war of words, wit, and wisdom. And as the baseball season moves into its final 6 weeks, the San Francisco Giants have, in John Burkett and Bill Swift, the winningest 1-2 pitching punch in the game. The Giants also have the best record in baseball and a 7.5-game lead over the Atlanta Braves, the defending National League champions. But in the next 11 days, the Giants and Braves are scheduled to play each other 6 times. Will the Braves catch the Giants? Will Atlanta win a 3rd straight pennant? Will Jane get to chop again? That's the subject of our face-off today between Bill Conlon of the Philadelphia Daily News and Bob Ryan of the Boston Globe. And Conlon, who is a giant man, figuratively, leads off.
They're going to call the movie Gullible's Travails. Before the Irishman here gets to swing the shillelagh, I want to point out to America that he did really pass math at every level. He might have had a little trouble in BC. Okay, Bob, on June 10th,
yes, June 10th,
the last time these two teams played, the Giants had a 6.5-game lead. Since then, the Braves have had a magnificent 43-20 record. Only one problem. They now have a 7.5-game lead and a 44-19 record.
You should know, never say never. I give you the 51 Giants, 13.5 Battle Ox 11th. I give you the 78 Red Sox ahead by 14 middle of July. And the granddaddy of them all, you should know, 6.5, 12 to go, the 64
All
Phillies.
of them overhauled by brilliant clubs. Atlanta is not a brilliant club. It is merely a good club.
It's a very good club with the best pitching rotation in baseball. The offense has been jump-started by Fred McGriff. Let me throw this one out about the Giants. Billy Swift always has been a good pitcher.
Best numbers of any of the pitchers involved here.
He's way over the statute of limitations, you know, on the fragile meter. He's always getting hurt. If Billy Swift goes down, if he breaks down, you tell me about the Giants' rotation, and you tell me that some little snowball effect couldn't take place if they start to go down.
I'm worried about Will Clark not coming back or Barry Bonds not breaking down. That's what I'm worried about. The Giants have scored almost 100 more runs than the Braves, and this is an offensive year in baseball. This is not a pitching
but
year.
that takes into account the first 2 months of the season when the Braves were not yet in their offensive gear,
And
which
Ryan,
they are right now.
You need a sweep. You need a sweep this week, and you probably need another sweep
5 out of 6
next week.
No, would gain 4 games right there, and then that would set the mental wheels spinning downward.
I will give you the schedule edge. You have a big edge. You finished with 4 against the Colorado Rockies, and that worries me.
I presume you also feel that the Red Sox can overtake the Torontos, the Yankees, and the Orioles.
Much different matter. Much different matter.
Much different
That's
matter.
a race. I mean, that's a real race.
So the Giants can't lose. The Phillies can't lose. Should we start the NLCS tomorrow?
I wish we could, because then we could go in. We could do what we want to do.
So
Let's get into football.
Is throwing in the opener? Is it going to be short or is it going to be bunting?
And what I want to do,
bunting and short. It's going to be Burkett and Swift. Burkett and Swift.
When Greg Norman couldn't get this birdie attempt to fall on 18, he found himself in yet another major playoff. We'll take a look back at last Sunday's PGA Championship next.
Are back. The bombs are back. The blitz is back. The NFL is back on ESPN. The Steelers face the Vikings on an ESPN NFL preseason special. Here comes Barry, so get out of the way. Barry Foster powers the Steelers against the Vikings in a final preseason battle before the real wars begin. Thursday night at 8 Eastern, live on ESPN.
Greg Norman is a much better known golfer than Paul Azinger to everyone except perhaps their bankers. Azinger has banked more prize money than any other golfer in history except Tom Kite. Azinger has won more than $6 million just in the last 6.5 years. He took some of that money out of Norman's pocket last Sunday when Norman made a strategic mistake. He got into another playoff.
The putt that I hit on the first playoff hole was as good as putt as I could ever hit.
It's an emotional roller coaster out there. It's just so hard to win.
When he's first, he sinks this putt.
I do empathize with Greg a little bit. You know, it's tough to lose a tournament that way.
The ball is sometimes doesn't roll your way when it's not going to roll your way.
He came up to me, he was genuinely happy for me.
At this time, I present your champion, Paul Azinger.
To me, choking is, you choke mentally because all you can see is negative things instead of where you want your ball to go. That's choking to me, not because you're so nervous your hands are shaking.
But did your hands actually shake today?
Not really. My hands don't usually shake. I usually feel like I'm going to throw up or something.
Feel like you were going to throw up?
I thought I could throw up a couple times, yeah, but I maintained. But, you know, hey, man, there's nothing wrong with admitting you're nervous. It's human nature. I think that people out there, they want to know how you feel, and I don't mind telling them I was nervous. It's part of it. Bert Yancey told me one time, a long time ago, because I remember I grabbed the lead at Hilton Head after 2 days, and it's 1986, and, you know, I just said, gosh, I told my wife, if I have to be this nervous to make a living, I may ought to do something else. And it wasn't long after that Bert Yancey told me, he said, son, he said, you want to be so nervous you can't spit. And I've told a lot of friends that, but I said, why, Bert? You know, he says, well, because if you're not that nervous, you're not in contention, and you're playing like a dog.
The first 24 PGA tournaments of the year were won by 23 different golfers. Now, Azinger and Nick Price between them have won 6 of the last 11. So much for parity. The Sports Reporters is coming up on the hour. Roy Johnson, Tony Kornheiser, and Bob Ryan talking Yankees and Blue Jays, Michael and the media, Emmett and the Cowboys. But next, a look at athletes in the commodities market and you thought football was tough.
That I've been hit by Lawrence Taylor or Brian Lott or Dan Hampton or Singletary, but you've never been hit harder than I've been hit on the trading floor, and that's probably true.
The toughest guy for Riddick to fight next would be Evander Holyfield. We made that assessment back in May. The second toughest guy for him to fight would be Michael Moorer. The third toughest guy for him to fight would be Lennox Lewis. The fourth toughest guy for him to fight would be Jorge Gonzalez, believe it or not. Then there were some others, and then somewhere down around 10 or 12 was Tommy Morrison. Now, I want to explain something that I make no apologies for. My job as Riddick Bowe's manager is to make him the most money the easiest way possible.
Well, despite what Rock Newman said right there, he wasn't exactly Riddick Bowe's first choice, but the heavyweight champ will give the ex-champ Evander Holyfield another shot at the title he took from him last November. In fact, the two will fight at Caesars Palace in Vegas on November 6th, 1 week short of a year after Bowe and Holyfield went toe-to-toe for 12 splendid rounds. Bowe said Holyfield was his third choice. Tommy Morrison and Lennox Lewis were unavailable. Do you remember the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd? Well, these people do exist. Here's a quick reminder. The business of trading at a commodity exchange involves risk management. Traders hedge on price fluctuations on the future costs of commodities or stocks. Now, you may be asking, what does this have to do with sports? Well, believe it or not, it's a very competitive, intense, and physical business. Sound familiar? And your Kramer has more.
It's thrill of the moment, you know. It's highs, lows, it's competitive, it's aggressive. This is the greatest sports story in the world.
Yes, there is life after sports, and for some athletes, it's the pits, but of the profitable variety. The scoreboard has been replaced by the price board for these former pro athletes who are still in uniform, but now as commodities traders in the pits of the nation's futures markets, buying and selling contracts based on the future price of goods such as wheat, corn, and soybean. Cubs All-Star second baseman Glenn Beckert retired in 1973 and soon after started trading in the wheat pit at the Chicago Board of Trade. Even before he hung up his cleats, Chicago Bears guard George Seals was a formidable figure in the soybean pit. Former Blackhawks defenseman Jack O'Callahan put away his gold medal from the '80 Olympics and now trades stock market indexes at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Bears fullback Matt Suhey used to bring his computer to training camp to open new accounts. These days, the Super Bowl champion can be found in the soybean meal pit at the Board of Trade.
A friend of mine once told me that I've been hit by Lawrence Taylor or Brian Lott or Dan Hampton or Singletary, but you've never been hit harder than I've been hit on the trading floor, and that's probably true.
The place at times has a funky odor. The perspiration in sports, that athletic odor, here it's a little more pungent.
You hear the sound of the pit, the sound of the floor. You can tell when it's a selling mode or a buying mode or where the markets break. You get adjusted to it, just the same as in baseball. You know exactly where you should be on a certain hitter.
There's contact. At times when the market is busy, bodies are smashed upon bodies.
Coming down here as a professional athlete, especially a hockey player, it was, people were a little more weary of maybe trying to test me, especially physically.
A number of analogies between sports and trading can be drawn, but money isn't necessarily one of them. For example, the average price of a seat to trade grain futures is $440,000. Quite an investment, and the stakes are different as well. If a player loses a game, it's a drop in the standings. But if a trader has a bad outing, he could potentially lose $100,000.
This is a very difficult place to be successful. It's the pit, okay? It's the bottom of it, where people are down here fighting and scratching and clawing. And 90% of the people down here make 10% of the money.
All right, 70 bid. Yeah, come on. While their athletic careers have prepared them well for the trials and tribulations of trading, their fame only extends so far.
Getting inside that door is nice, and they might want to see me because I have that gold medal, because I was a professional athlete. But once I get in there and sit down, they'll look at me. You know, if I have nothing to say, they're going to kick me out because time is money for the people that I'm dealing with now.
So 27-80.
These former athletes have made a smooth transition to the world where profits, not points, are the objective, because on the trading floor, every day is game day. In Chicago, I'm Andrea Kramer, ESPN.
Unfortunately, not all former pro athletes have made such a smooth transition after their playing days are over. It can often prove to be tragic, in fact. And we'll spend some more time discussing this disturbing problem on SportsCenter at 11:30 Eastern. Next year on Sports Weekly, we'll head to the Detroit Lions training camp, and that man right there, Barry Sanders, is definitely the Lions' main engine in the Motor City. We'll try to catch him if we can. Next.
Today, there are hundreds of credit cards, but only one offers Smart Rate, now as low as 14.9%.
When the Detroit Lions went shopping for free agents this offseason, they had a particular position in mind: offensive linemen, big, experienced ones. Not a glamorous position, you say? Well, the Lions already have plenty of that in their backfield with Barry Sanders, one of the game's premier running backs. But as Tom Jackson is about to tell us, the Lions knew Sanders could use some help in order to truly show his stuff.
Play action, dig, double left, 26.
If I was coach and I thought it was very important, I mean, obviously, I'd go get probably the best lineman I could.
During the offseason, the Lions designated Pro Bowl tackle Lomas Brown their franchise player to protect him from becoming a free agent. Then they signed 3 free agents to protect the franchise. Ex-Falcon Bill Fralick is a 4-time Pro Bowler.
Good breakdown. Good breakdown.
Ex-Chief Dave Lutz is an 11-year veteran.
Go!
Ex-Charger Dave Richards has started every game in his career.
That's it. Good.
And Barry Sanders may be the happiest running back in the world.
You can tell just in the conversation that they love to go up and smash linebackers and whoever else gets in their way.
Basically, you got to be mean. You got to be willing to come off the ball, smash people in the face, under the chin.
They come back to the huddle excited about it.
Aggressiveness has got to come out of you. You've got to want to just beat on people.
Last year, all 3 played right guard. Lutz will move to right tackle and Richards to left guard.
If they just keep people off of Barry, let Barry get the ball, have a chance to find the crease, we'll all be rewarded.
Last year, only Barry Sanders could have run for 1,352 yards behind a makeshift offensive line. But last year's makeshift offensive line is now one of the NFL's most expensive. And the Lions are thinking that maybe, just maybe, their $13 million investment will pay a 2,000-yard dividend.
The 2,000 yards.
What about it?
Can you get 2,000 yards here? I sit back and I say, if there's another back in the world that can do what the Juice did, OJ's going to do it.
I don't want to degrade anybody, but it seems like the Juice, when he got it, he had to, you know, because there's no one, I don't know who else he had on his team. I don't know if our game plan, you know, will really call for me having to rush for that many yards.
The quest for 2,000, as well as a big year for the Lions, requires the passing game to keep defenses honest. And the Lions' defense, now anchored by Pat Swilling, must prevent the offense from having to play catch-up. And then the burden falls back on the trio of new, wealthy offensive linemen.
We want to come out of this, quote-unquote, being the saviors. We don't want to come out of this and things go wrong and being the goats.
Barry Sanders' running sparks a what-if question. What if his best runs weren't just to get back to the line of scrimmage? The Lions hope this will be the what-if year. In Detroit, Tom Jackson, ESPN.
Despite the services of Sanders, the Lions couldn't generate much offense last season. Allowing the quarterback to be sacked 59 times could have something to do with that. Only 9 touchdowns via the ground and 83 first downs. The Lions can only manage an average of 103 yards rushing per game last year. More NFL news and notes in half an hour on the Sunday morning edition of Sports